If you remember from the last call, we switched the format up a little bit, so we pretty quickly are just going to dive straight into content for folks who are excited for that, and then we'll talk about events at the end. One thing I want to start with, which if folks were on the CRM community call, you'll know we're going to have a summer break. We know lots of folks will be out over July and August, so we decided let's just give everyone a little breather. We can all take that time back, and then we'll come back in September. Hopefully all recharged after some time off in the summer. I feel like that's the community call mandate. Please take some vacation time. And I'm excited for us to come back again in September. These have been like really wonderful community calls for me. It's been so great to get to know the community over the last year. Like I really came into a role of as part of the executive office, focusing on community efforts about a year ago now, and to now know so many amazing faces and people is just really special. So I'm really grateful for the time we've had together and excited to continue on with gusto in September. So why don't we talk about our speakers? Do you want to talk a little bit, Anna, about Mariano's presentation today?
Yes, of course. Well, Mariano, it's very funny because he shares the name with an actor from Argentina. There was like a very everyone liked him in the early 2000s. So yeah, I met him in the MVP Summit. He's friend of a friend, Natalia, that is probably here in the call. And yeah, I went through the presentation that he's planning for today, and it's a topic that I'm yes, and it's a topic that I have never seen before, so I'm really excited. Yeah, let's see what he can teach us about warehousing. So please, Mariano, take over.
You should have presentation abilities, so you should just be able to take over the screen share.
Let me see if you can see my screen. There it is.
Can you see it? Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Awesome.
Okay, so hello to everyone. I'm going to speak a little bit about warehouse management only mode. This is a new feature, not so new, it's a couple of years ago, but I have the opportunity to implement it in a project. So I'm really excited about it because it changed the way that warehousing is made or is implemented in the past. Okay, so let's dive in. Just a slide to get to know me. My name is Mariano Martinez, as Ana said, like the actor in Argentina. I'm a Microsoft MVP for business applications, and I'm a principal solution architect from Axon Consulting. I've been working in Dynamics for the last, I think, 12 or 13 years. I'm also a co-author of this amazing piece of literature, which is a book about supply chain management, which I wrote with Juan Bravo, which is in the call around here. It's a book dedicated for supply chain, so it's a really good first step to dive into the application. And here are my contacts if you want to ask about anything about supply chain, I'm able to. So let's start with the topic today. We are going to see quickly, because we have like 15 minutes, about warehouse only mode, which are the most common scenarios to implement it and how it works, and a quick demo if we have the time. So warehouse only mode is a functionality which you are going to implement only the warehouse management over the supply chain modules, and it's a legal entity that is dedicated only for warehouse management. It doesn't have the accountability or anything else about warehouse management. So this allowed to implementation to have like real scenarios where, for example, multiple companies are integrating into one big distribution center, and you don't have to switch between companies because you could have all your stock shared between all your legal entities. Or, for example, if you want to implement, I don't know, for example, Business Central and integrate your warehousing into F&O, and then go back to Business Central to do the financials. Okay. So, for example, these are the most common scenarios that we could have in warehouse only mode. For example, when you are implementing only the supply chain processes, and you have your external ERP as Business Central, for example, or SAP, whichever it is. So you take the sales order and purchase order from your external ERP and integrate it into Dynamics SCM, the warehouse operations. So you will have like an inbound shipment order that comes into warehouse operation. You do all your stuff, and then you communicate to the other system, the other ERP, the result of that. So you could do the financials in the external ERP system. That's one way. This is pretty common for example, third-party logistic, which didn't have the inventory or didn't own the inventory of the other company. So you could separate or segregate, for example, between owners and brands and so on. Another scenario is if you have, for example, multiple legal entities like this, and you share, I don't know why it's changing. Can I stop this? Okay, I don't know why it's okay. So you could have these multiple legal entities, and you share your distribution warehouse, and you create a new legal entity only for distribution. So what you will have is, for example, a sales order or a purchase order from multiple legal entities, and it's going to have all of these supply chain processes in between your distribution legal entity. And once you end with this, or you distribute everything, you communicate again to the legal entity. So you don't have to create an API or development about this integration. So what you could do is only create your legal entity, and you would have your on-hand inventory segregated by owner, which is an amazing upgrade from the warehouse management system, because in the standard WMS, you couldn't use the owner the owner part of the system. So this is a great scenario for these cases. And for example, another scenario that you could have with this functionality is when you share the operations. Again, it's changing. You share your operations, but you share your warehouse with another ERP or another legal entity, but you have purchase and order processing in the same legal entity. So in this case, you would have financials over this company or this legal entity, and also you could have external, let's say, on-hand inventory from another company, and you could do the logistics or the distribution part of the other company. So you could share these operations. Again, this is just 3 common scenarios, but you could have whatever you want, because it's like an integration. It's an API where you use only the SCM part of the ERP. So how this is working? Okay. This is information that I take from the Microsoft Learn, and this is the way that is communicating between one ERP and another. So when you create a purchase order, an invoice shipment order message is created in warehouse management. We're going to see that in a minute. And then you do the receiving, the put away, and complete the receiving process. This is a new steps that you can communicate to the other ERP or the other company that you are complete with the receiving process. And in this step, the other company can finalize the purchase order processing and do the costing and so on. Same happens with the outbound process, which is pretty much the same. I'm not going to dive deep because we don't have so much time. And if you are doing on-hand updates, you could integrate between Contin and all the process that you have in inventory internal processes, okay? Let's dive into AX. I'm seeing a raised hand here. I don't know if you have any questions.
Yes, I do have one question, if you just can allow me to ask.
Yeah.
So, can we use it for the logistic companies? Like, for example, if they have the warehouses and they just provide the warehouses services. So, is it possible to integrate it with multiple clients' ERP systems?
Yes, you could. I currently implemented in a company that have multiple legal entities associated with it. So I have one warehouse, one distribution legal entity for, I think that is 10 or 12 companies. So yeah, you could have, even if you have a 3PL a scenario, a logistic scenario where you don't have you don't know the inventory, you could do it as well. So I'm going to show quickly purchase order processing, and I will try to explain quickly the setup that you require. Then you're going to see how you could do this segregation between companies and so on. So I'm here. I have this Contoso distribution warehouse, which is my warehousing company, my warehousing legal entity, and my USMF company I have in this other tab. So first of all, what we are going to create is a purchase order. We're going to procurement and sourcing all purchase order and going to create it quickly. So I'm going to hit new. Any vendor is okay for me. So 101. And in here, the important step here is to give it a warehouse that is associated with the process. Okay, so in this case, I created this warehouse. If I go into quickly to the setup of this warehouse, the warehouse has to be activated to warehouse management process, and you need to set up this part, which is the external warehouse. It's an externally managed warehouse, and you have to say it in which integration you're going to use. So let's dive quickly here. And in here, you are saying that they are pointing to the legal entity that is going to manage this warehouse, and also which are the source system that is set up in the distribution company. So for example, I have here two integrations set up. One is the USMF company and another is the USPI, which are going to separate or segregate my inventory between the owner dimension that we have in the inventory. So now I can use it like this way. And also you have here, for example, which is the processing policy for inventory reservation, if you're going to require for reservation beforehand, or you're going to reserve the inventory in the outbound process, outbound shipment order, and so on. So this is how you set up the scenario for this process to work. Okay, so going back, I'm going to create my order. So in this company, which is the USMF, my item, which is this one, sorry, this item is set up for warehouse management processes, okay, with all the setup that is required for it. So I'm going to save this and I'm going to confirm this purchase order. Once I confirm this, you're going to see that a message is shown that it says that an inbound shipment order is created for the external warehouse. Okay, so here you got purchase order sent to external warehouse management system. So what is doing here is integrating with my order company, which is the responsible for handling the warehouse operations. So if I change here and go to my inbound shipment orders, here is the message center for, sorry, okay. So here I got my message center for every order. If you see here, my purchase order 426 is now created an external order. And if we enter here, we are having all the message that, all the information that is from this order. This screen is pretty much the same as a purchase order, okay? But in reality, it has little information. So here I have my message. I have a process that is running and is creating the inbound shipment order in here. So what we can do as this an open order, we can receive it with our warehouse management app. So I created a menu here. So if I go into the inbound part, I have my inbound shipment order and put away. So we can receive this operation in my warehouse. So I'm going to receive my order 426 in here. Sorry, I have my phone working. Now it's asking me for an item. I'm going to create it by hand. So now I have my item, and it's asking me for the quantity. So I'm going to hit 10 units, and I'm going to confirm that it's going to go to the receiving dock, and then it's going to give the put away order. So I'm going to confirm my put away. Once I'm done with this, I have to say to Dynamics, hey, I completed my received process. So I have to scan here the load that this order is received. So I'm going to copy it real quick. Here it is. I'm going to paste it. And once I confirm this is well completed, you're going to see that the order, the status is updated to received. And this allows me to integrate with my other company to do the receiving process as well. So here in the external warehouse integration monitoring, I have my message, which is going to impact to the other warehouse, to the other company, legal entity. So I saying, okay, I received this in my warehouse, so you can process the receiving process from this purchase order. So now what I can do here is go to my receive and post my product receive. And if you could see, is updated as a registered quantity. So I don't have to do the receiving process in the same in this company because I did it in the warehouse. So here is the seamlessly integrating. Sorry, I didn't specify the number. It's seamlessly integrated with both legal entities. Okay, I don't know if I have more time, but I think not. So this is the thing that I want to show you today. I don't know if you have any questions about it because we did it real quick.
If you want to take a couple more minutes, you're welcome to. And there are a couple of questions in the chat. One of them is, have you faced scenarios where it makes sense to make a separate SCM instance just for hosting warehouse only mode?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Let me put it in the chat. So the first one is, have you faced scenarios where it made sense to make a separate supply chain management instance just for hosting warehouse only mode?
Yeah, for example, I work in a car dealership where they sell different parts. For example, a Chevrolet or a Ford, and they have different parts of these vehicles that were stored in the same warehouse. So for costing purposes, they shared all the distribution center between all these legal entities. So when you receive one part, you're stored in different parts or different zones of the warehouse, and the picking process were done by different people, for example. But if you have the standard dynamics, which the WMS module between for each legal entity, you have to switch into each company to do that. Okay.
Awesome, thank you. And then another one, given that you've implemented this, have you ever had to interface with any ERP systems that were running on an AS400? I don't know what that is. I'm looking for ideas or examples on how others may have done this.
No, in this scenario, but if you could send from the AS400 some XML or JSON to an API, you could do it, because the message, you could see it in the learn link that is in the PPT. I'm going to share it with you. In the Microsoft Learn, you have all these XML or JSON that you could use, and they are pretty simple to fill that up. So you could integrate with AS400 if you could send this XML.
I have a follow. This is Brian. I got a follow-up question on that, and it seems like in where I kind of operate in is the Midwest of North America, and there's a lot of AS400s out there, and there's a lot of opportunity for warehouse only mode in a number of these areas. And I'm also an AS400 guy. I've been doing that for many years, but and I think this is more of a generic question relating back to the interface and how those messages and those updates are going back to whatever the system of record is. in general, when you send that message back with the update, whether it be an inventory update or a picking update or a ship confirm update, things of that nature, how is the interface, or how are you updating the system of record? Is it a SQL update eventually, or is it a situation where you would invoke, say, a business function within the system of record to invoke or to execute the transaction based on the information that was sent back? Or is it something where it's going to be different every single time?
It's going to be different every single time because you have to interpret this message in the source system. So in some scenarios, you could have some API built to do this, or a service, or an SQL, for example, interpret this message and change by SQL, which I do not recommend. But yeah, you have to build in the system that you are integrating with, because most of them don't have this integration.
Sure. And in part of as part of an implementation of warehouse only mode, I would assume that the building of that integration to update those source records within the system of record would be a big part of that implementation.
Yes, the good thing is that from the F&O side, you have built this. There is an API working, so you have to consume this service in the external ERP to use it, but it's a big part of the implementation. Depends obviously on the system that you are integrated, because AS400 it's hard to do some changes in that system. But I don't know. We had a customer that have AS400 and they built a layer to integrate with another system, because they have CRM and so on. So it depends.
So yeah, they created a group of external tables, like that they would send their information to, and that's where the interaction of the data would take place. That makes perfect sense.
Like a middleware or something.
Right on. Okay, thanks.
No problem.
I think Mangesh, you had your hand up a while ago. I'm wondering if you still have a question.
No, it got answered. Thank you. I appreciate
it. Thanks so much, Mariano. Yeah, go ahead, Mangesh.
Sorry, beg your pardon. But this will, if we are going to sell, like I'm talking like a business prospector, like I'm a salesperson, but then convincing $110 only for warehouse mode, will it be economical viable? Does Microsoft is offering some different licensing term for this?
I don't think it is. I have to check that out, but let me answer you later on, because I don't know if it has a different licensing. As this, in my case, as this was part of the bigger implementation, we can manage with the licensing that we have. But I have to check it out, but I'm assuming that you have the same licensing that you need for a new environment, which are the 10 minimal license for this. Good thing is you could use activity licensing for these WMS users, and that
I understand
much less.
Either we should end up taking device scale, but item receiving becomes like a commercial hit, like it hits the principal tables of finance. That's the reason they will ask you to go with a full user licenses.
Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, So the point is clear to me. So there is no
Yeah.
separate license till now. It got introduced by Microsoft for
Not at this time.
only
No.
for. Yeah. Thank you.
That's
Thank
it.
you
I
so
think you had
much.
so much time. So
No, that was great. Clearly, folks are interested in it. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for teaching us all. That was really great. Mariano has sent me the slides, so I will get them emailed out to everybody at the end. And would now like to hand over to Jared. So Vandana, member of our team who we all know and love, suggested asking Jared to come and present on the call because she had seen an awesome presentation from him and thought we could create a condensed version of it. So Jared's here to talk about building your first agent for ERP and how we can customize the experience for F&O. So Jared, I'll hand over to you.
All right, thank you. So far, I'm loving the call. Great content presented already, Mariano. Thank you, and enjoying the chat with the community here. The topic that I'm going to be talking through is on extending and customizing AI agents, and I'm trying to share my screen here.
Jared, you're beloved
Well,
already. I don't know if you can see the chat at the same time.
He was
Well,
at Dynamics Mind, and he had a full house. It was crazy.
my computer is slowly trying to catch up to the chat, but yes. So I see many on the calls that I've recently had in-person conversations with. I attended a couple of conferences and presented on this same topic. So it's always exciting to see enthusiasm for this topic, but also just opportunities to connect with the community. I love it when we can speak and interact and talk about the topics that we're thinking about from a Microsoft perspective and how it's going to impact your business. So like you mentioned, this is kind of a condensed version of presentation that we do when we talk in community or go to conferences. So it'll be an overview, but excited to continue with conversation and questions and comments and provide some materials where you can pick up the content that we'll talk about here in the discussion and begin working with AI in your environment. So we'll start. Just to start off, we'll talk about the agentic ERP platform and setting the stage of the tools and abilities that you have to extend and customize AI experiences using the data and business logic of your business applications. And that last point is key, that AI is awesome. Large language models are fantastic, they're powerful, and they've really set a revolution of technology over the last few years, building out scenarios that we couldn't automate before, things that we couldn't do because large language models trained on language are really good at understanding human communication. And so we want to take advantage of that by using that AI and those large language models to manage generative orchestration within your organization, use the reasoning of these of large language models to orchestrate across activities that are happening in your organization. But at the same time as we're looking at that, we see a huge opportunity for business applications to contribute to this agentic platform. So just talking through this, we have at the top of this stack, we have our user experiences, where we have the application where the user can sign in, they're working in the application and have AI generated experiences and content presented to them at a UX layer. But below that, we have the agentic layer, the agent orchestration, the foundation that's primarily powered by Copilot Studio. That's where our large language models sit. That's where we have our orchestration that is looking at all the things that you can do in a business application and then managing the orchestration of those activities as we build agents on top of that functionality. Where we have business services contributing to this platform is the data and business logic that we can bring into the conversation on top of those agents. One of the things that I think is a misconception of large language models is that they just know everything. And we kind of have that misconception that we go to the ChatGPT and we ask a question and it just knows. I ask, what is AS400? It just knows. I ask a lot of things and it just knows the answer because it's been trained on essentially the entire internet. But where we want to temper that expectation is that large language models are language models. They are really good at understanding language. They're really good at generating language content. They're really good at understanding communication between two individuals and giving you the ability as a human to communicate in natural language with your system. but it doesn't do business logic. It doesn't do calculations natively. A really good example of that is when ChatGPT first came out, or GPT 1.0, the initial models that were released, you would go and ask a question and you could ask, what's 2 + 2? And it would know, because somewhere on the internet, that's a common language pattern to say 2 + 2 = 4. But if you went anything beyond that and asked any two random 10-digit numbers, what's one number plus another number, it would get it wrong. It would hallucinate, it would make up an answer because it's looking at it from a language perspective, not a native calculation perspective. So we want to make sure that when we build these agents on top of our business applications and platforms, that we are using the native data and business logic of that application to perform those operations. So to enable that, we have a huge amount of data and business logic in our Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations apps. There's over 1 billion lines of code in our code base at this point. That's from our base code plus extensions that have been added on top of that from ISVs, from many of you on the call that have written and are responsible for a lot of that code across the planet. That is a huge amount of business logic that is very deterministic. It's often defined in law how those calculations must happen. And so that it's been written into code how we do those calculations, like a calculation of depreciation, or a calculation for a customer balance, or your debits and credits within a financial statement, or how we're printing those financial statements. All of that is very deterministic and can't be something that we're just throwing to a large language model to predict the language that needs to come out of it. So when we have this agent foundation, where we have agents that are using that generative orchestration and the power of large language models to perform those operations, we need to ground that in the business logic by calling into our agent business services built on finance and operations apps, data and business logic, bringing that extra power from our applications into the agent layer. So when we talk about agents, there's a spectrum of experiences that we've built for our finance and operations apps that vary in complexity. So we have our just basic retrieval, which is primarily our chat experiences. So we have a sidecar chat panel in F&O. You've probably seen that. It was released last year, where you can slide that out and start chat experiences. We have embedded AI experiences that are just using a natural language prompt to perform some operations under data within the context of your application and bring that as an insight within the application. So these are out-of-box experiences that you have available to you that have opportunities for extension and customization on top of those. With the next level of complexity is prompted operations. So you can create an operation within your application and use and have that prompted either through a trigger or through a conversation to be able to trigger those operations and have that as something that is done within your organization. And then moving further along this road is autonomous agents that can perform independent operations. They are operating independently. They have their own dynamic plan based on that generative orchestration within the agent platform to perform the operations that it's been given access to and given knowledge about. So, some of those from the autonomous agents, I want to call out specifically that these were just released in public preview. These are available now. I encourage you to go take a look at these. We won't dig into the details of each of these in this call, but these are things where we are automating processes using AI operations connected to the business logic of your applications. So time and expense from our project operations apps and approvals from project operations. From supply chain management, we have a supplier communication agent. From finance, account reconciliation agent, and from field service, the scheduling operations agent that bring in AI using those large language models to automate business processes and so we can perform an operation and bring a human into the loop to approve and review those operations that have happened. A really good example of that is a supplier communication agent, because we're automating things that haven't been done before, that we couldn't automate prior to AI being involved. In this example, with supplier communications agent, we're receiving an email from a vendor, and rather than a human having to go in and read that email and understand the context of the email and then open up finance and operations and perform an operation, we can have an AI agent automatically read and process that email, understand the intent of that email based on the language, and then call back into our business system to perform an operation or create a pending operation that is presented to a user to say, this is what has been requested from this vendor. This is how it will impact the supply chain. Here's the suggested operation. Approve, reject, delegate, or whatever needs to happen as a human workflow on top of that after it's already been pre-processed and taken some of that operation off the hands of a human. So we're removing a lot of the drudgery from the work that can be done, freeing up humans to perform more high-value operations within the organization rather than having to read through emails all day. If I could remove email from my list of things to do every day, it'd save a huge amount of time. But these are some of the things that we can do, is using AI to understand language and summarize that and bring that into our business processes. Looks like my computer's slowly trying to keep up with me. So on the next slide, when it does load, is a high-level overview of the architecture of the interaction pattern. So once we get into building agents, extending and customizing these experiences, this is the overall model that we're looking at. So this is where you, as a user, as a maker, as somebody who's deeply involved in your business processes, once you start bringing AI into these experiences, this is the overall model of how this works. That we have our inputs. Well, the primary orchestration layer is based in Copilot Studio, where we have our agent built. That's where we have our generative orchestration with our large language models. We have instructions that have been given to that agent in natural language. So it's a fairly straightforward process to configure these agents because we're using natural language to instruct the agent on how to perform the operations that it's working on. And then a list of tools that are the things that it knows how to do. The things that it's been granted access to do based on security model and things that it knows how to do is a list of those things to be added. Then we need to trigger that agent. That can be either through system events, that could be business events or data events coming from finance and operations, or other events that are built into the ecosystem. User messages or prompts, and then agent messages that are triggering the agent operation. But when this tool is determined by the generative orchestration that it needs to be called, we call back into our system to either run the business logic or get the data that is necessary to fulfill that operation, bring that back into the agent so that we can give a response back as output to the user. So we're always making sure that we're grounding these operations in the data and business logic of your applications. As we get into the next level of just thinking through, how do you get started? How do I get started as a user building AI experiences for F&O, for Dynamics 365 ERP? And there's this isn't a comprehensive list, but this is the types of building blocks that you can use when you jump into Copilot Studio to start building on the experiences that we have out of box, and building your own experiences with custom agents as you look at the experiences that you want to build and extend for your AI experiences in F&O. That we're taking the low-code AI tools that are built on the Power Platform and using that as our basis for the generative orchestration and connecting it to the data and business logic of your ERP application. So things like topics that are kind of declarative flows that are step-by-step that we can be added directly in Copilot Studio. Agent flows are similar, as they are a tool set for us to bring the abilities of Power Automate directly into your agent in Copilot Studio. So we can have those deterministic flows and operations that are performed with Power Automate, that bringing that whole tool set directly into Copilot Studio. Prompts that are natural language statements, instructions, things that we can tell the agent how to do and save those as prompts that can be used in our system to tell the agent what to do. So it's removing those pro-code experiences from the requirements of being able to build these experiences and just commanding it in natural language, which is extremely powerful in using those LLMs to perform these AI operations. And then connectors and other tools that are available for us to connect to the data and business logic of both F&O and other systems. And then using that as a communication pattern down into our ERP system. where we're using knowledge, which is all of the rich data that you have in your system to be able to register that as a knowledge source in Copilot Studio in your agent to be able to communicate with your data and chat with your data in natural language, or bring that into an autonomous flow as information that is included in your operations. We have our events. As we discussed, these could be used as triggers, of data events and business events, using that business events framework for F&O to be used as triggers for those operations and create those autonomous agents. Client plugins are another tool that we can use to connect to the business logic of our application, where we are connecting directly to a class in F&O and executing our X++, executing business logic with it directly within the application from F&O. A client plugin is used within the context of the sidecar chat panel in F&O, where we're saying that this is capability that we're adding in AI to be invoked by our AI agent, but is invoking directly X++ that is applicable within the context of our client application from the sidecar chat panel. So we can do things like navigate through the application or filter a list or perform other operations within the client from natural language in that chat because of that invocation of code from our client plugins. And then AI plugins is similar in that we are opening up, and this is the agent, a component of our agent business services that the agent layer can communicate directly with our backend code, invoking that X++ as a headless operation as an AI plugin, that we can register that in a custom Copilot, in a Teams chat, or anywhere that we need to have that operation exposed and invoke the business logic of our application. So a canonical example that we typically use is calculating a customer balance. Something as simple as that requires some code to be run because it's not just a field that sits in the database. It's a runtime calculation that we need to look at the customer, we need to gather some information, we need to run a calculation, and then we present that to the user. So we can't just do a get on a OData API to get a customer balance. But we can do that from an agent by invoking that code, using that deterministic logic that's already built into the application, and bring that back as a response to our agent to bring that back. We can do similarly by doing things like summarizing payment information, or summarizing invoices, or just any headless operation that we need to be exposed to our AI layer can be invoked directly in that X++ using those AI plugins. And then finally down here, we'll talk in a minute about Dynamics 365 ERP MCP, the Model Context Protocol, where we've built a Model Context Protocol server that is exposed in Copilot Studio and is available to other agent platforms that are compatible with this protocol to be able to invoke business logic in our backend system. So if we look at just a quick example that brings together a lot of these components to show how we can use prompts, how we can use an agent, how we can use deterministic code, and also call back into our system to run operations and register knowledge sources on our F&O virtual entities to be able to bring in the data and business logic of our application into an agent scenario without having to write any code. So we'll run this, and let me make sure I'm sharing my sound.
F&O virtual entities are available as knowledge sources in Copilot Studio, giving agents much more flexibility in the use of ERP data. When adding a knowledge source to an agent, if I search for MSERP, it shows me the list of all virtual entities that have been generated in this environment and are available to be added as knowledge sources to this agent. In this example, I've added a couple of entities that show me customer and sales information for my collections team agent, giving me the ability to ask questions in natural language about this data. For example, when I publish this agent to Teams, I can then ask questions in natural language, like asking ad hoc queries about the primary contact information, or asking it to summarize some data in the related knowledge source tables, or asking it to give me a table of some filtered data with some conditional formatting. All of this enabled by having it available as a knowledge source. Knowledge sources also contribute to scenarios with autonomous agents. In this agent, I've added an autonomous trigger that sends an email to the customer anytime an invoice is posted for that customer, reminding them of any outstanding balance. In this example, we'll use a previously posted invoice to test the operation. When this runs and we trigger the flow, we can see the prompt that's invoked that will invoke business logic using actions, but also use knowledge sources to gather information like primary email address, organization name, credit balance and credit rating, and other information that will be used to send the email and be included in the body of the email. Rather than needing to code explicit actions to go get each piece of information, we have much more flexibility by just asking for this data using a prompt that is then used over knowledge sources. If we then look at the email, we see that the required information was gathered and sent to the appropriate email address based on the knowledge source that was gathered in that operation.
All right, so it's a quick example that brings together a lot of those building blocks that we talked about on the previous slide to show that we can, without much effort, to be able to pull together some of those experiences, connecting to the data and business logic of our application, and build AI experiences for scenarios that you want automated using those large language models and AI, bringing that into the experience and grounding it in your data and business logic. Let's talk.
Virtual entities are available.
Quickly, let's talk about Dynamics 365 ERP MCP. This was an announcement that we announced at Build just a couple of weeks ago that we now have available for Dynamics 365 ERP, a model context protocol server. And I'll start with just a quick recording and demo of what that experience looks like in using our MCP server to add functionality to an agent really quickly and easily, streamlining this experience. And this is something that will continue to grow as we go forward in using MCP, which is a standard industry protocol for opening up additional opportunities to connect to the data and business logic of the application.
Procurement is a multitasking balancing act of data digging, supplier research, analysis, and communication. This can become even more complex as in healthcare, where timely, cost-effective supply delivery is critical to both the organization and the people they serve. Maya, a procurement specialist, is working to get time-sensitive medical supplies. She uses an AI procurement agent to help review requisitions, find suppliers, and issue purchase orders. The agent autonomously validates incoming purchase requisitions against company policies. For each item, it checks existing inventory and delivery records to find a suitable supplier based on speed, cost, sustainability, and risk. If the same supplier is identified for multiple items, it consolidates them into one purchase order. Let's see how one of these agents is created. In Copilot Studio, a maker can simply describe what they want an agent to do. In this case, they want to create an agent that will review new requisitions against company policies, find the best suppliers for each product, and issue purchase orders to those suppliers. They name it, press Create, and then add concrete capabilities and reasoning. Choosing an MCP server for ERP, this model context protocol catalogs and coordinates the actions agents can perform and the data they can access to complete complex goals. These can be modified at the server level without touching client code, and can even use additional MCP servers made by partners to integrate with multiple systems. With that set, simply publish. And with that, the procurement agent is up and running, ready to transform requisitions into point of sale, and point of sale into products in hand, helping to ensure critical supplies reach their destination on time and in full.
Model context protocol.
Yes. Sorry, I'm not sure who was saying model context protocol, but yes, that's the topic here that we're for model context protocol. That gives an overview, and I like the way that we pulled together this scenario that we enabled the model context protocol server and made that available for release. It's in public preview now, currently rolling out to environments. So you may not yet see it in your environment. It's in a 6-week rollout train that will hit all environments by the end of June. So if you don't see it in your environment today, hold on, it'll be there soon. But we want you to start playing around with it. What is available in your environment today for that MCP server exposes 13 operations. So it's a very limited, very, very limited subset of the operations that are available across all of F&O. And that's kind of our initial foray into Model Context Protocol to release it and make it available for you to, as simply as it showed in the video, add that server to an agent, and then you have access automatically to all of the operations that are available on that server. This will continue to grow. This is a core priority for our team to continue to expand on this MCP functionality, to be able to bring more and more functionality to our agents through this MCP server. So look for more announcements coming on that, but this is something that we're working hard to make sure is quickly expanding to expose more operations and make that a streamlined experience. But the experience, the benefits here is that we have a streamlined workflow, that the data and business logic of the application is exposed through a server, and all you need to do is add that server that brings context, understands the context of your agent, and can expose the correct contextual operations that are available to that agent, so then you're up and running without needing to add additional configuration. So simplifying that agent development experience. It's also using a single standard protocol. MCP wasn't developed by Microsoft, but it's being taken up by Microsoft rapidly, so that we can participate in the AI community. It's a protocol that just manages the relationship between the agent platform and backend systems. And because we're built using that protocol, you can take our server and connect it to any agent platform. Copilot Studio is still going to be our primary platform, but you could use that server on any agent platform that supports the protocol, and then removes that need for hard coding because those operations are just exposed automatically through the MCP server. The experience is just bringing that directly into your agent, and then you're off and running with those natural language instructions that you give to it to tell it what it is that you want it to do based on the context available to it. So this is a priority. I'm excited to continue working on this, and we'll have more announcements coming up on it. But please go give it a try. Where you can get information on that, well, if you want to get in touch, here's my information. And here is a link where you can go get more information on the things that we talked about here on the call, including some tutorials. That list of tutorials I will continue to grow over time. There's a few other demos that I want to put in there just to give ideas to the community on things that you can do with AI and the power that it brings when we bring the context of our business logic and data from our business applications into that agent layer. So go take a look at it and get in contact with me if you have questions, comments. I'd love to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, Jared. That was awesome. Thanks for putting that ak.ms link up as well. I'm going to cut us off. We are at time. There's 2 awesome presentations today and a phenomenally chatty Teams chat. So thanks, everybody. I hope you all have an awesome summer, and there aren't really any events for us to call out this time. A lot of the events, sort of calm down over the summer. So thanks, everybody. We will see you in September.